Today's Website Time Machine episode focuses on Dulux. In particular, we're going to be looking at the selection of paints available by Dulux and how they're presented in the website. So without looking at any of the websites so far, there's a few different ways that this could be represented. We could focus on color swatches. We could instead focus on photographs of rooms. We also have interactive elements. For example, stylize the room in your own color palette. And I've definitely used a Dulux website in the past that has that feature. But also, how is it going to be humanized in a way that when a customer is looking at the Dulux website, that it resonates with them? So many challenges for a very simple product company. Not knocking paint, but we all know what it is. So even though we may have nuances of different paints, our eggshell versus gloss versus emulsion, then we've got different finishes like matte and gloss. But at the end of the day, it's all paint. So how do we make a simple commodity product appear like a luxury item? And that's what I'm going to be exploring with Dulux's websites as we go back in time and look at how they've evolved their message in their website over that period. Let's crack on. I've got 4 websites loaded up in the time machine this week. A version from the year 2000, then we're jumping ahead to 2009, 2019, and then finally ending up with today's version. As you would expect, we're going to start off in the year 2000, and this version, other than being teeny tiny, very much a trend, and this is probably either an 800 by 600 screen size or even 640 by 480. This is actually recording only a partial size of this ultra wide screen, but we can see where we've come to. I think this monitor is still much lighter than the monitor that I would have used in '99 to view this type of website. What we can see here is a very simple brand. So Dulux is a sub-brand of ICI, or at least it was back then. ICI is a UK chemicals company, I believe, and I think it even dates back to the tail end of the First World War. A company with a huge amount of heritage, and we're actually looking at the footer here, the copyright's from 2004. I'm not sure how a snapshot of the year 2000 says 2004 in the footer, so it could be the Wayback Machine doing some jiggery-pokery with the design, but this very much looks like a layout from the turn of this century. I'm just interested to see if we hover over the text. Is it selectable? No, because we had limited text selection at the time. And what we've got here is a website that was created by talented graphic designers really struggling or frustrated working in web. We've got some text that's selectable in the menu and the footer. We have very little text on here. Ranking on Google wasn't seen as an overly important aspect back then, nowhere near as it is now. And we certainly didn't have any fluid layout design. If I click on one of the areas, so let's go into the inspiration section and see if that page loads. Okay, it didn't load the first time. Let's try it one more time. It doesn't seem to like it. We'll try the colors one. Otherwise, we'll swiftly move on. Nothing particularly new to look at this, but it's always nice to see where it started. And the one thing we'll notice is this brand will change as we move through the years. But not yet. Now we're jumping into 2009. And we can see the introduction of gradients. So we're moving into the Web 2.0 era, maybe even the tail end of that era. I really like the tiled effect here. I think that could work really nicely with a modern, responsive layout design. But again, we're looking at a solid image with text that's not selectable. So current day standards, that wouldn't be seen as very accessible. And even back in 2009, it's really pushing the edge of what you can get away with. Again, we're looking at a narrow width. And we've got this little bolt on here for my projects, like a little scrapbook edition as well. And we've got a very corporate top menu system. Certainly not pushing the boundaries in terms of style. And we can see the color swatches here tie in with the safe option for paint enthusiasts, if that's a thing. Interior designers, let's go with that. The login option here seems to be top priority. And we've got a tab system that will just change the content accordingly. That works quite nicely. But again, very safe option, narrow width. For 2009, more websites were starting to push the boundaries a little bit, but we're still a few years off having responsive design by this stage. So let's move into 2019, and this is where we see a huge jump. So if we go back to the previous two, we can see an evolvement, certainly. But if it wasn't for the masthead, they could almost pass as 2 pages on the same site. But when we jump into the 2019 version, we see the industry has moved on quite a way. A menu at the top here, we've got some clear signposting options on the homepage hero unit. We've got a font that's been updated and is now selectable, which ties in with the Dulux brand. And we've got our Old English sheepdog, synonymous with Dulux. The brand has changed. And now we have this person with this very colourful blanket, cloak, not quite sure. Very colourful something. Adds a certain splash of colour. Now we go into the signposting and we can see 4 signposts here. Very straightforward. Text is now selectable. So this is picking up on search engines and it's going to be more accessible, more user-friendly. We've then got a simple grid structure where we have large photos offset to the left. And each of these look like they've been reduced in size for faster loading. And as we scroll through, we're now bringing in smartphone apps, the Dulux visualizer. I tried it. It was a little bit clunky, but it did the job just about. And then we've got secondary heroes going through the page. All in all, very safe, usable website layout. If we notice now how the login section has been now reduced in size, this is partly down to user habits. We tend to look for it and we know that it's going to be somewhere in that top right-hand area on modern websites. Let's jump ahead to the latest version. This is the website as of today. We've got our hero unit where we've got the 2 call to actions. That hasn't changed. The design of the masthead hasn't changed at all. We've seen a subtle variation of the brand, more about the framing of it than it changing itself. If I'm being honest, I think I prefer the older version. I find that cleaner and easier to pick out on the page. And we've got a nice, clean, simple to use menu system. I was wondering if the colours would change for each page that we could go over. That could be a nice little touch. And if we look at this option here, there's no drop downs on that menu system. We've still got our 4 call to actions, but now this is designed in a structured area. Nice little pop-out effect where each block grows on hover. This photo, I don't know what it is. It looks like it was taken by Midjourney or some sort of AI concoction. I'm sure it isn't, but it just gives me weird, uncanny valley vibes. And as we move through the page, we've got this tab system here where we can see different trending color palettes, which is a nice little touch with, I'm assuming, an option to favorite them there. So some nice interactivity there. And we go back to a very similar grid structure for the content on the page. You could argue this is a little unruly and it's a little bit of a paint by numbers approach. Sorry, I've got this far and that's the first pun. But you can't expect me to review a paint website without a couple of colourful puns to brighten everything up. If we look at some of the additional pages in the site, we can see how the structure changes to a traditional e-commerce layout. Very simple, playing it extremely safe. One thing I always say with our online courses is when you're building a website, it's not always about having award-winning design. Sometimes it's just about making sure you know your audience and find the easiest, smoothest way of getting them from A to B. For example, this signposting here, so simple, but yet can be so effective. That's quite an interesting take there, where we've got the signposting built into the hero unit. So we're not leaving the page and it just takes us to those sections. Not sure what the 3 dots are for. That doesn't seem to be interacting at all. But if we were to pick a color here, let's pick the red. Let's go with walls. No result. Apparently there are no red wall options for living rooms. So I'm not sure if that's working very well. Maybe it's my Luddite brain not functioning this afternoon. But ultimately, I like the effect that it keeps you on the home page until you get to the end of that process. There's some nice finishing touches here on this website. Now's the time where I want to hear what you think. Which version do you think works the best? Do you think they moved too far away from the visual style? I really like these colored tabs in here, and I think they would stack up in today's designs. It's definitely designed at the time by a skilled designer who's got good eye for color, as you would hope, but also for space and the use of visual elements to tie in with each of the blocks. This option plays it a little safer, but the tab system works quite nicely. And then as we move through to 2019, we can see a layout that's extremely safe, but very similar to the current day version. Do you think that they should have been a bit bolder and gone a little more extreme, or do you think that this paint by numbers route was the way to go? I believe next up in our website time machine series, we're going to be looking at the Disney website. I think we'll just go for the overarching Disney site as opposed to looking at individual strands of Disney because there are now so many of them. So stay tuned. That'll be with you in the coming days. I'll catch you next time.